It was December 27, 2025 at 2:47 a.m. when a restlessness I couldn't name, a holy discontent that had been building for weeks, drove me to the beach shoreline near my home. And there, surrounded by the rhythmic crash of winter waves against sand, the salt-thick air clinging to my skin, the distant lights of fishing boats bobbing like fallen stars on the black horizon, Jesus appeared in a way that shattered everything I thought I understood about this moment in history, and he spoke words that still echo in my chest. Jonathan, before the calendar turns, I am separating my remnant. They are being marked right now, not by their own seeking, but by my sovereign choice, and most of my church will miss it entirely. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it, but you've been marked. Before I go any further, I need you to do something. Drop your prayer request in the comments right now. I don't care how long it is. I don't care how impossible it seems. There's an anointing on this message that I can't fully explain, and I believe, no, I know, that Jesus wants to meet you in your specific need as you engage with what I'm about to share. And if you're a true believer, if you're hungry for genuine encounter and not just religious entertainment, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, because what's coming in the next few weeks will separate the curious from the called. For those who don't know me, my name is Jonathan Roumie. I'm 51 years old, single, no children, just a man who said yes to playing Jesus in The Chosen, never imagining that portraying him would lead to actually encountering him in ways that have undone me completely. The Chosen has reached hundreds of millions of people, but that's not why I'm here tonight. I'm here because 3 nights ago, Jesus met me on a beach and showed me something about this specific moment in time, about you, about why you're watching this before 2026 arrives, that I cannot keep silent about. Let me take you back to that first night. December 24th had been strange. Christmas Eve should have felt celebratory, but instead, I felt this growing weight, this sense that something massive was shifting in the spiritual realm. I'd been in prayer, reading scripture, trying to prepare my heart for the new year, but nothing was settling. By 2:30 a.m. on the 27th, I'd given up on sleep entirely. I threw on jeans, a heavy jacket, and drove to the beach, a stretch of Orange County coastline I've walked 100 times when I need to think, to pray, to breathe. The temperature was probably 52 degrees, unusually cold for Southern California, the kind of cold that seeps through your clothes and makes you feel awake, alert, vulnerable. I parked in an empty lot, walked past the closed lifeguard station with its peeling paint and posted warnings about riptides, and made my way down to where the sand was still damp from high tide. The moon was 3 days past full, hanging low and enormous over the Pacific, painting a silver road across the water that looked almost solid enough to walk on. The waves were consistent, maybe 4 feet, rolling in with that deep bass rumble that you feel in your sternum before you hear it with your ears. Foam hissed up the sand, reaching for my boots, then retreating. The air tasted like brine and kelp and something else, ozone maybe, like before a lightning storm, though the sky was clear. I walked north, hands in my pockets, breath visible in small clouds. There were no other people, just me, the ocean, and a sky so full of stars, it looked like someone had shattered diamonds across black velvet. Orion hung directly overhead. I remember thinking how small I felt, how the vastness of creation has a way of putting your problems in perspective. But your problems aren't small, Jonathan, and neither is this moment. I stopped walking. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, from the waves, from inside my chest, from the air itself. And I knew. Immediately, I knew. I turned slowly, and he was standing 20 feet away, right at the edge of where the waves were breaking. The moonlight seemed to gather around him, not reflecting off him but emanating from him, as if he was the actual source and the moon was just borrowing his glory. He was wearing simple clothes, a dark shirt, pants that looked almost like linen, feet bare on the wet sand, but his eyes, God, his eyes were like the ocean itself, deep and ancient and full of both infinite gentleness and terrifying authority. Jesus, I whispered. My legs felt weak. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. He smiled, but it was a sad smile. Walk with me. We walked south along the waterline, and I noticed that his feet left impressions in the sand while mine seemed to barely register. The waves kept their distance from him, as if they knew their creator and were giving him space. A cold wind picked up, coming off the ocean, carrying spray that stung my face, but he seemed untouched by it. Do you know what time this is? He asked. It's almost 3 a.m., I said, confused. No. He stopped and turned to face the ocean. Do you know what time this is? What moment in history you're standing in? I shook my head, suddenly feeling like a child who hadn't done his homework. He gestured toward the horizon, where the first hint of pre-dawn gray was beginning to separate sea from sky. Before that sun rises on a new year, I am doing something that most of my church will completely miss. I am marking my remnant. I am setting apart those who will carry my presence into what's coming. And Jonathan, he turned to look at me, and the intensity in his gaze made me want to fall to my knees. You're watching this happen in real time, and you don't even realize it. I don't understand, I said. The people watching this message right now, he said, and I understood somehow that he was speaking not just to me, but through me to you. They didn't find this by accident. They didn't stumble onto this video because of an algorithm or a recommendation. I brought them here. In these final days of 2025, I am gathering my own. I am calling them out of lukewarm religion, out of comfortable Christianity, out of churches that have my name but not my presence. And I'm marking them, setting them apart for what's coming in 2026 and beyond. A wave larger than the others crashed behind him, sending spray into the air that caught the moonlight like 1,000 tiny prisms. The wind picked up even more, and I had to lean into it to keep my balance. But Lord, I said, what do you mean by marked? What are you setting them apart for? His expression grew more serious. Come, I need to show you something. He began walking toward a cluster of rocks that jutted out into the surf about 100 yards down the beach. I followed, my boots sinking into the soft sand, my breath coming harder as we walked. The rocks were covered in barnacles and mussels, slick with seaweed, and the waves exploded against them with tremendous force, sending white water 10 feet into the air. Jesus climbed onto the rocks as easily as if he were walking on a sidewalk. I struggled behind him, slipping twice, catching myself on the sharp edges, feeling the cold water soak through my jeans. We reached a flat area about 15 feet above the waterline, and he sat down, motioning for me to join him. From this vantage point, I could see the entire sweep of the coastline, the curve of the bay, the distant lights of houses climbing the hills, the dark mass of the ocean stretching to infinity. The wind was fierce up here, constant, pulling at my jacket, making my eyes water. Look at the water, Jesus said. I looked. The waves kept coming, endless, relentless, each one following the one before it, crashing against the rocks, retreating, returning. This is how most people live their faith, he said quietly. Wave after wave of religious activity. Church on Sunday, small group on Wednesday, maybe a Bible study, maybe some worship music in the car, crash, retreat, return, crash, retreat, return, constant motion that looks like life but goes nowhere. Do you see it? I nodded slowly, beginning to understand. They're busy, he continued. They're sincere. Many of them genuinely love me. But they're trapped in a pattern, Jonathan. They're stuck in a cycle of spiritual activity that never transforms them, never empowers them, never sets them apart. They look like every other wave. They sound like every other wave. And when they crash against the rocks of real opposition, real spiritual warfare, real cost, they retreat. They always retreat. He stood up, and as he did, I noticed something impossible. The waves directly in front of us began to still, not stop completely, but calm, as if an invisible hand was smoothing them. Within seconds, there was a circle of glass-smooth water about 30 feet in diameter, while all around it the ocean continued its chaos. But there is a remnant, he said, his voice rising above the wind. There are those I am calling out of the pattern, those I am marking with my presence, my power, my purpose. They won't look like the other waves anymore. They won't sound like them. They won't retreat when things get hard. And the church, the institutional, comfortable, lukewarm church, won't know what to do with them. He turned to me, and in the growing pre-dawn light, I could see tears on his face. Jonathan, I need you to understand something. The people watching this, the ones I've drawn here, they've been feeling it. They've been sensing that something is different, that something is shifting. Maybe they've felt isolated in their church. Maybe they've felt like they don't fit anymore. Maybe they've been having dreams, visions, unexplainable encounters. Maybe they've just felt this restlessness, this holy discontent that won't go away, no matter how many services they attend or how many worship songs they sing. I thought about my own restlessness over the past weeks, and suddenly it made sense. That's me, he said firmly. That's me calling them out. That's me marking them. That's me setting them apart. And if they ignore it, if they push it down, if they try to fit back into the pattern, if they let fear or comfort or other people's opinions silence what I'm doing in them, they will miss the greatest move of my spirit they've ever experienced. The smooth circle of water suddenly erupted, not with waves, but with light, brilliant, golden light that seemed to come from beneath the surface, illuminating the water from within. I gasped, shielding my eyes, and in that light, I saw images, visions, flashing faster than I could fully process. I saw a woman in Ohio, sitting at her kitchen table at 3 a.m., weeping, feeling completely alone in her faith, wondering if she was crazy for wanting more than what her church offered. And I saw Jesus standing behind her, his hand on her shoulder, marking her. I saw a young man in Texas, lying in bed, unable to sleep, scrolling through his phone, feeling that same restlessness, that same sense that everything was about to change, and I saw Jesus standing at the foot of his bed, marking him. I saw an elderly couple in Maine holding hands in their living room, praying together, asking God if there was more for them even at their age, even after decades of faithful service, and I saw Jesus standing between them, marking them both. The visions came faster, hundreds of faces, thousands, all over the world, different ages, different backgrounds, different circumstances, but all of them feeling the same thing, the call, the marking, the setting apart. "These are mine," Jesus said, and his voice was thick with emotion. "These are the ones I'm gathering. These are the ones who will carry my glory into what's coming. Not the famous ones, not the ones with the biggest platforms or the most impressive ministries. These hidden ones, these hungry ones, these ones who feel like they don't fit anymore because I'm making them into something the current system can't contain." The light faded. The water returned to its normal chaos. I was trembling, partly from cold, partly from the weight of what I'd just seen. Jesus sat back down beside me. "Before 2026 arrives," he said quietly, "I am sealing this. I am marking my remnant. And everyone who sees this message is being given a choice. Will they recognize what I'm doing? Will they say yes to being set apart? Or will they retreat back into the pattern, back into the comfortable wave that crashes and retreats, going nowhere?" "Lord," I said, my voice shaking, "what do they need to do? How do they respond to this marking?" He smiled again, and this time there was joy in it. "That's what I'm going to show you tomorrow night. Meet me here again. Same time. There's more you need to see. More they need to understand." He stood, and as he did, the eastern horizon began to glow with the first real light of dawn. The stars were fading. The moon was setting. A new day was beginning. "Don't ignore this," he said, looking not at me but through me, speaking to you. "Don't scroll past this. Don't let fear or doubt or other people's opinions talk you out of what you're feeling right now. You've been marked, you've been set apart, and what I'm about to do in your life will be unlike anything you've experienced before. But you have to say yes. You have to step out of the pattern. You have to be willing to not fit anymore." He began walking back toward the shore, his form becoming less distinct as the dawn light grew stronger. I scrambled off the rocks trying to follow, but by the time I reached the sand, he was gone. Just me, the waves, and the rising sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I stood there for a long time, soaking wet, freezing, completely undone. The beach was still empty. The world was waking up to just another Friday morning. But I knew that something massive had just happened, something that would change everything. Tomorrow night, I'll tell you about the second encounter, about what he showed me next, about the specific ways this marking manifests and what it means for your life in 2026. But right now, I need you to do something. If you felt something while reading this, if something in your spirit resonated, if you felt that restlessness I described, if you've been sensing that you're being called out and set apart, I need you to comment below. Just type, "I've been marked." That's it. Because I believe Jesus wants to confirm this in your spirit. I believe he wants you to make that declaration, to step out in faith, to say yes to what he's doing. This isn't for everyone. It's not meant to be. But if it's for you, you'll know. You already know. It was 2:33 a.m. on December 28th when I returned to the beach, and everything had changed. The weather had shifted dramatically. What had been a clear, cold night was now turbulent. Thick clouds racing across the sky, blocking the moon except for brief moments when silver light would break through and illuminate the churning water below. The wind had picked up to at least 25 miles per hour, coming in gusts that threw sand against my face like tiny needles. The temperature had dropped to the mid-40s, and the air felt heavy, pregnant with a storm that hadn't quite arrived, but was definitely coming. I want you to understand something before I continue. After that first encounter, I barely slept. I spent all of December 27th in a daze, replaying everything Jesus had said, trying to process what I'd seen in that circle of illuminated water. I'd received hundreds of comments on the first part of this message, people from every continent, every background, all saying the same thing. I've felt this. I thought I was alone. I thought I was crazy. But this is exactly what's been happening in my spirit. Do you see what's happening? Do you see how he's confirming this? If you commented, I've been marked on part 1, you're part of something that's bigger than you realize. You're part of a global remnant that Jesus is gathering right now in these final days of 2025. And what I'm about to share with you tonight goes even deeper. But first, if you're just joining us, if you didn't see part 1, go back and watch it. This builds on everything that was revealed in that first encounter. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what's being released through these messages is time sensitive. This isn't content you can come back to whenever you feel like it. This is a now word. This is a before 2026 arrives word. And if you miss it, you'll spend the next year wondering why you feel so spiritually stuck while others are walking in breakthrough you can't access. So there I was, back at the same stretch of beach, but it felt like a completely different place. The parking lot was empty again, but this time the wind was so strong it was rocking my car. I had to push hard against the door to get it open. I'd worn heavier clothes this time, a thick hoodie under my jacket, gloves, a beanie, but within minutes of walking onto the beach, I could feel the cold working its way through every layer. The waves were massive, 6, 7, maybe 8 feet, crashing with such force that I could feel the impact through the sand beneath my feet. The sound was deafening, not the rhythmic, almost peaceful crash from the night before, but an angry, chaotic roar. Spray filled the air, making it hard to see more than 50 feet in any direction. The tide was high, much higher than the previous night, and the water was coming up almost to the base of the dunes. I walked to the same spot where I'd first seen him, but the rocks where we'd sat were now completely submerged, invisible beneath the violent surf. I stood there, leaning into the wind, salt water soaking my face, wondering if he would even come in conditions like this. I always come in the storm, Jonathan. That's when people need me most. I spun around. He was standing right behind me, maybe 10 feet away, and this time he looked different. His clothes were whipping in the wind, just like mine. His hair was wet. He looked more human, somehow, more present in the physical reality of the storm. But his eyes, those eyes still held that same otherworldly depth, that same mixture of infinite love and absolute authority. Lord, I said, having to shout over the wind, I've been thinking about everything you showed me, about the marking, about the remnant, but I still don't fully understand. What does it mean? What are you setting us apart for? He gestured down the beach, and we began walking south again, this time much closer to the water. Waves were rushing up the sand, soaking our feet, retreating, returning. The wind was so strong I had to lean into him just to stay upright. Do you feel this storm? He asked. Yes, Lord. It's intense. This is what 2026 feels like in the spirit realm, he said. This is what's coming, not just for America, for the world. Turbulence, chaos, systems shaking, institutions crumbling, things that seemed solid and permanent being revealed as temporary and fragile. And my church, the vast majority of my church, is not prepared. We reached a section of beach where the dunes had been carved away by erosion, revealing layers of sand and rock and shell, a cross-section of years of accumulated sediment. Jesus stopped and pointed at it. Look at this, he said. What do you see? I studied the exposed cliff face. Layers, I said. Different colors, different materials, years of buildup. This is the modern church, he said, and there was grief in his voice. Layer upon layer of human tradition, religious programming, institutional thinking, cultural compromise. Each generation adding another layer, burying the foundation deeper and deeper. And now, the storm is coming. He gestured at the violent waves, and it's going to strip all of this away, everything that's not built on me, everything that's not rooted in genuine relationship and authentic power is going to be exposed and eroded. As he spoke, a particularly large wave crashed against the base of the dune, and I watched as a chunk of the layered cliff face simply collapsed, sliding down into the water and disappearing. "That's what's coming," Jesus said quietly. "The storm is going to hit the church first, not to destroy it, but to purify it, to strip away everything that's not me. And most people, most Christians, are going to be terrified because they've built their faith on those layers. They've built their identity on programs and positions and theological systems and church culture, and when the storm strips it all away, they won't know who they are anymore." He turned to face me directly, and even in the darkness, even with the spray and the wind, I could see tears mixing with the salt water on his face. "But the ones I'm marking, the remnant I'm setting apart, they're different. I'm teaching them now, before the storm fully hits, how to build on the right foundation. I'm teaching them now how to find their identity in me alone, not in religious systems or human approval. I'm teaching them now how to access my presence and my power directly, not through intermediaries or institutions, so that when the storm comes, when everything else is being stripped away, they'll stand firm, they'll be unmoved, and they'll become lighthouses for everyone else who's drowning in the chaos." "Lighthouses," I repeated, and as I said it, I looked up the beach and saw it, an actual lighthouse about a mile away, its beam cutting through the storm, rotating steadily, unwavering despite the violence of the weather around it. "Yes," Jesus said, following my gaze, "that's what you're being marked for, not to hide from the storm, not to escape it, but to stand in it, anchored to me, shining my light so others can find their way to safety. Do you understand? The marking isn't about comfort. It's not about blessing. It's not about having an easier life than everyone else. It's about being equipped to stand when everything else is falling." We started walking again, this time toward the lighthouse. The wind was at our backs now, pushing us forward, and I noticed that the storm seemed to be intensifying. Lightning flickered in the clouds far out over the ocean, too distant for thunder, but close enough to illuminate the massive swells rolling toward shore. "Jonathan, I need to show you something else," Jesus said. "Something about what happens to those who ignore the marking, to those who feel the call but choose comfort instead." He stopped walking and turned to face the ocean. As he did, he raised his hand, and suddenly, impossibly, the wind stopped. Not gradually, but instantly, complete stillness. The waves continued, but the air became perfectly calm. And in that supernatural silence, I heard something else. Voices. Thousands of them. Crying out. "Listen," Jesus said. I listened. The voices were coming from everywhere and nowhere, just like his voice had that first night. But these weren't his voice. These were human voices, and they were filled with regret. "I felt it," one voice said. "I felt you calling me, but I was afraid of what people would think." "I knew you were doing something new," another voice said. "But my church said it wasn't biblical, so I ignored it." "I wanted more," a third voice said. "But more seemed risky. Staying where I was seemed safer." On they went. Hundreds of voices, thousands, all saying variations of the same thing. They'd felt the call, they'd sensed the marking, but they'd chosen fear over faith, comfort over calling, human approval over divine appointment. "These are the ones who will spend 2026 in spiritual regret," Jesus said, and his voice was heavy with sorrow. "They'll watch the remnant walk in power and presence and breakthrough, and they'll remember this moment. They'll remember that they felt me calling them to something more, and they'll wonder why they said no." The voices faded. The wind returned, stronger than before. Jesus lowered his hand and looked at me with an intensity that made my knees weak. "I need you to understand something, Jonathan, and I need everyone watching this to understand it too. This marking, this setting apart, it's not automatic. It's not something I force on people. I call, I invite, I mark, but they have to respond. They have to say yes. They have to be willing to step out of the comfortable pattern, out of the religious system that's kept them safe but powerless, out of the approval of people who don't understand what I'm doing in this hour." He began walking toward the lighthouse again, and I followed, my mind reeling. We were getting closer now, close enough that I could see the structure clearly, white paint peeling from years of salt and wind, windows dark except for the rotating beam at the top, a narrow path leading up from the beach to its base. "Let me show you what the marked ones look like," Jesus said. "Let me show you how you'll recognize them, and how you'll recognize yourself if you're truly one of them." He stopped at the base of the lighthouse where the waves were crashing against a concrete seawall. The spray was flying 20 feet into the air, drenching us both. He placed his hand on the lighthouse wall, and suddenly I was seeing visions again, but different from the first night. More detailed, more specific. I saw a woman, maybe 40 years old, sitting in a church service. The worship was loud, the lights were flashing, people around her had their hands raised, but she was sitting still, tears running down her face, feeling completely disconnected. Not because she didn't love God, but because she could sense that what was happening around her was performance, not presence. She was marked, and the marking made her unable to settle for anything less than genuine encounter. "She'll leave that church," Jesus said quietly, "not in rebellion, but in obedience to me. And people will judge her. They'll say she's being divisive, that she's too critical, that she needs to submit to leadership. But I'm the one calling her out. I'm the one who's marked her for something that building can't contain." The vision shifted. I saw a young man, maybe 25, working a normal job, living a normal life, but spending hours every day in prayer and worship in his apartment. His friends thought he was becoming extreme. His family worried he was joining a cult, but he was marked, and the marking created in him a hunger for God that nothing else could satisfy. "He's going to move in power that will shock everyone who knows him," Jesus said. "Healing, deliverance, prophetic accuracy that can only come from intimate relationship with me, not because he went to seminary or got ordained or climbed some religious ladder, but because he said yes to the marking, because he chose me over everything else." Another vision. An elderly man, maybe 70, who'd been a pastor for 40 years. Successful by every metric, large church, respected in his denomination, comfortable retirement ahead. But the marking came on him, and suddenly he couldn't preach the same safe sermons anymore, couldn't play the political games anymore, couldn't pretend that programs and budgets and buildings were what mattered. "He's going to lose everything," Jesus said, and there was both sadness and pride in his voice. His position, his reputation, his retirement, his friends, because he's going to start speaking truth that the system can't tolerate. But he's going to gain me in a way he never knew was possible. And in 2026, when the storm hits and everyone else is scrambling, he's going to stand firm, and hundreds of people are going to find their way to safety because of his light. The visions came faster now. A single mother working 2 jobs, marked, praying in her car between shifts, and seeing miracles of provision that defied natural explanation. A teenager in a hostile home environment, marked, worshiping in secret, and experiencing God's presence so powerfully that the darkness around her couldn't touch her. A businessman who'd built an empire, marked, and beginning to dismantle it all to follow a call that made no sense to anyone but him and God. "These are my remnant," Jesus said, and his voice rose above the storm. "These are the marked ones. They don't look alike. They don't fit a demographic. They're not all in one denomination or one movement or one geographic location, but they all have this in common. They've said yes to being set apart. They've chosen me over comfort. They've chosen my presence over human approval. They've chosen to be lighthouses instead of just another wave crashing and retreating, going nowhere." The vision stopped. I was back on the beach, soaking wet, shivering, but feeling more alive than I'd felt in years. The lighthouse beam swept over us, and in that moment of illumination, I saw Jesus more clearly than I had all night. He looked tired. He looked like someone who'd been searching for something precious and rare, and the search had cost him. "Lord," I said, "I want to be one of them. I want to be marked. I want to be set apart. But I'm afraid. I'm afraid of losing things. I'm afraid of what people will think. I'm afraid of getting it wrong." He smiled, and it was the saddest, most beautiful smile I've ever seen. "Jonathan, you already are marked. Why do you think I brought you here? Why do you think I'm showing you these things? Why do you think I'm speaking through you to reach my remnant? You've already said yes. You said yes when you took the role of playing me in The Chosen, even though you knew it would change your life forever. You said yes when you chose to decrease so I could increase. You said yes when you started prioritizing my presence over your career. The marking was already there. I'm just making you aware of it now." I started crying. Not gentle tears, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that came from a place I didn't even know existed, because he was right. I had said yes. I had been feeling that restlessness, that holy discontent, that sense of being called out and set apart, and I'd been afraid to fully acknowledge it because of what it might cost. "The fear doesn't go away," Jesus said gently, putting his hand on my shoulder. "But the marking gives you the strength to move forward despite the fear. That's what I'm giving to everyone who's watching this. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of my power that's greater than the fear." He turned and looked back out at the ocean. The storm was reaching its peak now. The waves were enormous. The wind was howling. The lightning was getting closer. But standing there next to him, I felt completely safe, completely anchored, completely at peace despite the chaos. "Tomorrow night," he said, "I'm going to show you what happens next. I'm going to show you what 2026 looks like for the marked ones versus everyone else. I'm going to show you the specific assignments I'm releasing and the specific attacks that are coming against those who say yes. And I'm going to give all of them a choice, a final choice before the calendar turns." He started walking away, back down the beach the way we'd come, his form becoming less distinct as the darkness and the spray swallowed him. "Meet me here again," his voice came back to me on the wind. 3 a.m., one more night. There's something you need to see at the darkest hour right before dawn, something that will change everything. And then he was gone. I stood there for another hour, maybe longer, watching the storm, feeling the wind, letting the reality of everything sink in. The lighthouse beam kept rotating, steady and sure, cutting through the darkness. And I understood. That's what we're called to be. That's what the marking is for. Listen to me. If you're still reading this, if you've made it this far, you're marked. You know you are. You've felt it, maybe for weeks, maybe for months, maybe for years. That restlessness, that sense that you don't fit in the religious systems anymore, that hunger for something more real, more raw, more powerful than what you've been experiencing. That's Jesus. That's him marking you. That's him calling you out. That's him setting you apart for what's coming. But you have to respond. You have to say yes. You have to be willing to let go of comfort and safety and human approval. You have to be willing to be a lighthouse in the storm instead of just another wave. Comment below right now. Tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what God is speaking to you. Tell me what you're afraid of. Tell me what you're saying yes to, because there's power in declaration. There's power in stepping out in faith. There's power in letting your yes be yes. Tomorrow night, I'll share the final encounter, the most intense one, the one that happened at the darkest hour, the one that showed me exactly what's at stake and exactly what's available for those who fully embrace the marking. Don't miss it. Your future depends on it. It was 3 a.m. exactly on December 29th when I arrived at the beach for the third night, and I want you to understand something. I almost didn't come. After the second encounter, after everything Jesus had shown me about the marked ones and the storm that's coming, I spent all of December 28th wrestling with fear, real, paralyzing fear, because I understood now what this marking actually meant. I understood what I was saying yes to, and part of me, the part that still craves comfort and security and human approval, wanted to run from it. I sat in my car in that empty parking lot for 20 minutes, engine running, heater on, watching the clock tick closer to 3 a.m., having a very honest conversation with God. Lord, if I go out there, if I have this third encounter, if I hear what you're going to say, I know there's no going back. I know you're going to ask me for everything, and I'm not sure I'm strong enough to give it. The clock hit 2:59 a.m., and I heard his voice, quiet but unmistakable. "Jonathan, strength isn't the issue. Willingness is. Are you willing?" I turned off the engine. The storm from the previous night had passed, but what replaced it was somehow more unsettling. Complete stillness. No wind at all. The ocean was flat, almost glassy, with just small ripples disturbing the surface. The sky was clear, but there was no moon. It had set hours earlier, and the darkness was absolute, the kind of darkness that feels thick, tangible, like you could reach out and touch it. The temperature had dropped even further, probably into the high 30s. My breath came out in thick clouds. The sand crunched under my boots, frozen in places where the spray had reached. Every sound I made seemed amplified in the silence, my footsteps, my breathing, the rustle of my jacket. I walked to the water's edge, and the ocean looked like black glass stretching to infinity. The stars were reflected on its surface, creating the illusion that I was standing between two identical skies. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "This is the darkest hour," his voice came from directly behind me. "The hour before dawn, the hour when most people give up, the hour when faith is tested most severely." I turned. Jesus was standing there, but this time he looked different again. More serious, more intense. His clothes were simple, dark, almost blending with the night, but his presence was overwhelming. The air around him seemed to shimmer, and I realized that he was the only source of light in this absolute darkness. Not bright light, but a subtle glow, like embers in a dying fire that still hold tremendous heat. "Lord," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm here. I'm willing. Show me what I need to see. He nodded slowly, then gestured down the beach. Walk with me one last time. What I'm about to show you is not easy. It's not comfortable, but it's necessary, because the marked ones need to know what they're walking into. They need to count the cost, and they need to understand both the glory and the warfare that comes with saying yes. We began walking north this time, away from the lighthouse, toward a section of beach I'd never explored. The darkness was so complete that I could barely see where I was stepping, but Jesus moved with perfect confidence, and I stayed close to him, using his faint glow as my guide. 2026, he said, and his voice was heavy with both promise and warning, is going to be unlike any year the church has experienced in generations. The storm I showed you last night, it's not metaphorical, Jonathan. It's literal. Not just weather, though there will be that too, but systems collapsing, economies shaking, governments in chaos, the things people have trusted in, money, security, institutions, technology, all of it is going to be revealed as insufficient. We reached a section of beach where the sand gave way to smooth, dark rocks. Jesus climbed up onto them, and I followed. From this vantage point, I could see the entire sweep of the coastline, but in the darkness it looked like we were standing at the edge of the world, with nothing but void stretching out before us. The church is going to face a choice, he continued. Actually, every individual believer is going to face a choice. Will they trust in me alone, or will they continue trying to find security in the systems that are crumbling? Will they step into the supernatural power I'm offering, or will they retreat into religious programs that make them feel safe but leave them powerless? He sat down on the rocks, and I sat beside him. The cold from the stone seeped through my jeans immediately, but I barely noticed. I was completely focused on his words. The marked ones, my remnant, they're going to choose me. They're going to let go of everything else and grab hold of me with both hands. And Jonathan, when they do, I'm going to move through them in ways that will shock the world. Healing that defies medical explanation, provision that defies economic logic, protection that defies natural circumstances, prophetic insight that defies human wisdom. They're going to move in the same power that my first disciples moved in, greater actually, because I said they would do greater works than these. As he spoke, the darkness around us began to change, not lighter, but different. And suddenly I was seeing visions again, but these were more vivid, more real than anything I'd experienced in the first 2 nights. I saw a city, I couldn't tell which one, but it was large, modern, American, and it was in chaos. People in the streets, stores being looted, police overwhelmed. But in the middle of it all, I saw a small group of believers, maybe 20 people, standing in a circle in a public square, hands joined, praying. And as they prayed, a visible light began to emanate from them, not metaphorical light, actual, physical light. And the chaos around them began to still. People stopped running. The violence stopped. And one by one, people began walking toward the light, toward the praying believers, weeping, falling to their knees, crying out for salvation. This is what the marked ones will do, Jesus said quietly. They'll be carriers of my presence in such a tangible way that it will affect the physical realm, not because they're special or super spiritual, but because they've learned to decrease so I can increase. They've learned to get out of the way and let me move through them without hindrance. The vision shifted. I saw a hospital room, a child on a bed, clearly dying, machines beeping, parents weeping, and I saw a woman, maybe 50 years old, ordinary looking, nobody famous, walk into the room. She didn't say much. She just placed her hand on the child's head and began to pray quietly, and I watched as color returned to the child's face, as the monitors began to show normal rhythms, as the child's eyes opened. The parents were screaming, the doctors were running in, and the woman just quietly slipped out of the room, giving glory to God alone. This is what's available, Jesus said. This is what I'm releasing to those who say yes to the marking, not occasionally, not rarely, but regularly, consistently, as a normal part of their walk with me, because the world is going to need it. The darkness is going to get darker, and my light needs to shine brighter through my people. Another vision. A church building, large, expensive, full of people. The pastor was preaching, but I could see in the spirit realm that there was no presence of God there. Just religious activity, just empty words. And I watched as, one by one, people began to stand up and walk out, not in anger, not in rebellion, but in response to a call they couldn't ignore. They were the marked ones, and they were being called out of the system that had contained them. This is going to happen all over the world, Jesus said, and there was both sadness and determination in his voice. The marked ones are going to leave. They're going to walk away from churches they've attended for years, from positions they've held, from relationships they've valued. Not because they want to, but because I'm calling them to something those systems can't contain. And it's going to be painful. It's going to be misunderstood. They're going to be called divisive, rebellious, deceived. But they're going to obey me anyway. The vision shifted again, and this time what I saw made my blood run cold. I saw the same marked ones, the ones who had walked out of the dead churches, the ones who were moving in power, the ones who were shining light in the darkness, and I saw them under attack. Spiritual attack, yes, but also physical attack, persecution, mockery, some losing jobs, some losing families, some facing legal challenges, some facing actual violence. Lord, I said, my voice shaking, why? Why would you mark people for this? Why would you call them into something that's going to cost them so much? He turned to look at me, and in the darkness his eyes were like fire. Because this is what it's always cost, Jonathan. This is what it cost my first disciples. This is what it cost every generation of true believers who chose me over comfort. The difference is that the modern church has forgotten this. They've created a version of Christianity that costs nothing and therefore produces nothing. They've made me safe, manageable, convenient, and I'm not any of those things. He stood up, and as he did, the darkness seemed to press in closer, heavier. The marked ones are going to remember what it means to take up their cross daily. They're going to remember what it means to lose their life to find it. They're going to remember that following me is not about comfort. It's about crucifixion and resurrection, death to self and life in me. And yes, it's going to cost them. But what they gain, his voice rose with passion, what they gain is worth infinitely more than what they lose. He raised his hands, and suddenly the darkness exploded with light. Not the gentle glow from before, but brilliant, blazing light that made me shield my eyes. And in that light, I saw the final vision. I saw the marked ones, thousands of them, millions of them, all over the world, and they were shining, literally shining with the glory of God. And I saw people running to them from every direction. Not just a few people, multitudes, the greatest harvest of souls in human history. People who had rejected Christianity because all they'd seen was dead religion, but now they were encountering the living God through his marked ones, and they couldn't resist. I saw healings happening on street corners. I saw demons being cast out in coffee shops. I saw prophetic words being spoken in grocery stores that brought hardened atheists to their knees in repentance. I saw provision multiplying like the loaves and fishes. I saw protection surrounding believers like a visible shield. I saw the book of Acts happening again, but on a global scale, in modern times, through ordinary people who had simply said yes to being marked and set apart. This is what's coming, Jesus said, and his voice was like thunder and whisper at the same time. This is what 2026 holds for those who fully embrace the marking. Not ease, not comfort, not safety, but power, presence, purpose, the privilege of partnering with me in the greatest move of my spirit the world has ever seen. The light faded. We were back in the darkness, sitting on the cold rocks, the black ocean stretching before us. But something had changed in me. The fear was still there, but it was overwhelmed by something greater, hunger, desire, holy desperation to be part of what he was describing. Lord, I said, what about those who don't say yes? What about the ones who feel the marking but choose to ignore it? What happens to them? His expression grew grave. They'll survive. Most of them. They'll continue going to church, singing worship songs, reading their Bibles. But they'll be spectators, Jonathan. They'll watch from the sidelines as my remnant moves in power. They'll hear the testimonies, see the miracles, witness the harvest, and they'll remember this moment. They'll remember that they felt me calling them. They'll remember that they had the opportunity to say yes, and they'll spend the rest of their lives wondering what could have been. He stood and walked to the edge of the rocks, looking out at the horizon where the first hint of pre-dawn gray was beginning to appear. But there's something worse, he continued. Those who actively resist the marking, those who not only refuse it for themselves but try to stop others from responding to it, they're going to find themselves opposing me. They're going to become like the Pharisees, using scripture and tradition and religious authority to try to contain what I'm doing. And they're going to be left behind when my spirit moves on. The gray on the horizon was growing, spreading, pushing back the darkness. I could see the outline of the waves now, the shape of the coastline, the details of the rocks we were sitting on. It's almost dawn, Jesus said. Almost time for a new day. Almost time for a new year. And I'm asking you, Jonathan, and I'm asking everyone who's watching this, will you say yes? Will you fully embrace the marking? Will you let go of everything that's holding you back and step into everything I have for you? He turned to face me, and in the growing light I could see his face clearly now. There were tears on his cheeks, but there was also fierce joy in his eyes. I need you to understand something. This isn't just about 2026. This is about eternity. The choices people make in the next few days, before the calendar turns, are going to set the trajectory for the rest of their lives. Those who say yes now, who fully commit now, who burn the ships and cross the Rubicon now, they're going to walk in a dimension of relationship with me and power through me that will mark them forever. But those who hesitate, who hold back, who try to keep one foot in the world and one foot in my kingdom, they're going to miss it, and they won't get this opportunity again. The sun broke over the horizon, sudden and brilliant, turning the ocean from black to gold in an instant. The warmth hit my face, and I realized I was crying, not from sadness, but from the weight of what he was saying, the urgency, the finality, the incredible opportunity, and the terrible cost of missing it. Tomorrow night, Jesus said, I'm going to give you the practical steps. I'm going to tell you exactly what the marked ones need to do in the next 30 days. I'm going to give you the blueprint for walking in everything I've shown you. But tonight, right now, I need you to make the decision. I need you to count the cost and say yes anyway. Because without that decision, without that full commitment, the practical steps won't matter. He began walking down from the rocks back toward the beach, his form solid and real in the morning light. I scrambled after him, my legs stiff from sitting in the cold, my mind racing with everything I'd seen and heard. Lord, wait, I called out. I need to know, how do we do this? How do we say yes in a way that's real, that's binding, that actually activates the marking? He stopped and turned back to me, smiling now, the sadness replaced by anticipation. You declare it, Jonathan, out loud, in front of witnesses. You make it public. You burn the bridges. You tell me and tell the world that you're all in, no matter what it costs. That's what I'm asking everyone who's watching this to do. Before 2026 arrives, make the declaration. Say yes publicly. Step out of the shadows and into the light, because the marking becomes fully activated when you stop hiding it and start walking in it. He pointed back toward the parking lot where my car sat alone in the early morning light. Go home, rest, prepare your heart for tomorrow night. Because what I'm going to give you then, the practical blueprint, the specific assignments, the 30-day challenge, it's going to require everything you have. But I promise you this, if you give me everything, I'll give you more than you can imagine. More power, more presence, more purpose, more joy, more life. Everything you've been searching for in all the wrong places, I'll give you in abundance. But you have to say yes first. You have to be willing to be marked. He turned and walked down the beach, and this time I didn't follow. I just stood there, watching him go, watching the sun rise higher, feeling the warmth begin to thaw the cold that had seeped into my bones, and I made my decision. Yes, I said out loud, my voice carrying across the empty beach. Yes, Lord, I'm all in, whatever it costs, whatever it requires, whatever I have to let go of. I say yes to the marking. I say yes to being set apart. I say yes to being a lighthouse in the storm. I'm yours, completely, no holding back. The moment I said it, something shifted. I can't explain it any other way. It was like a weight lifted and a mantle settled at the same time, like chains breaking and armor being put on simultaneously. I felt lighter and stronger, more vulnerable and more protected, more afraid and more confident. I walked back to my car in a daze, drove home, and spent the entire day in prayer and worship, unable to do anything else. Because I knew that I'd just crossed a line that I could never uncross, and I knew that my life would never be the same. Now I need you to do the same thing. If you've watched all 3 parts of this message, if you've felt the call, if you've sensed the marking, then you need to make the decision. You need to say yes, not just in your heart, not just in private, but publicly, out loud, in front of witnesses. Comment below right now. Type out your yes. Make it specific. Tell Jesus what you're saying yes to. Tell him what you're willing to let go of. Tell him that you're all in, no matter what it costs. Because that declaration, that public commitment, is what activates the marking fully. And I'm warning you, don't do this lightly. Don't do this if you're not serious. Because Jesus is going to take you at your word. He's going to begin stripping away everything that's not him. He's going to begin calling you out of comfortable places and into uncomfortable assignments. He's going to begin using you in ways that will terrify you and thrill you at the same time. But if you're truly willing to be marked and set apart, then say yes right now. Tomorrow night in part 4, I'll give you the practical blueprint, the specific steps, the 30-day challenge, the exact actions you need to take to walk in everything Jesus has shown me. But you need to make the decision first. You need to say yes first. The sun is rising on a new day. Soon it will rise on a new year, and the marked ones, the remnant, are being sealed right now in these final days of 2025. Don't miss your moment. It's December 30th, 2025, and I'm writing this to you not from the beach, but from my home, in the full light of day. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't another mystical encounter. It's the practical blueprint, the actionable steps, the specific instructions Jesus gave me for what the marked ones need to do in the next 30 days to fully activate everything He's shown us over these past 3 nights. But before I get into that, I need to tell you what happened after that third encounter. I went back to the beach yesterday afternoon, December 29th, around 3 p.m. in broad daylight. I needed to see it again. I needed to walk the same path, stand on the same rocks, look at the same ocean, but in the light instead of the darkness. And what I discovered shook me. The beach looked completely ordinary. Families were there with their kids. Joggers ran past. Surfers were catching waves. The lighthouse that had seemed so dramatic and significant in the storm was just a weathered old structure that most people barely glanced at. The rocks where Jesus and I had sat during that final encounter were covered in seaweed and bird droppings, unremarkable in every way, and I realized this is the point. The marked ones don't live in perpetual mystical experiences. We don't exist in constant supernatural encounters. We live in the ordinary world, the world of jobs and bills and traffic and mundane responsibilities, but we carry the extraordinary within us. We carry the presence and power of God into ordinary places, and that's what transforms them. The beach didn't change, I changed, and now, when I walk through ordinary places, I carry something that makes them sacred. That's what the marking does. It doesn't remove you from the world. It equips you to transform the world. So let me give you the blueprint. Let me share exactly what Jesus told me the marked ones need to do, starting right now, to walk in everything He's promised. The 30-minute daily challenge first. Jesus was very specific about this. For the next 30 days, from now until January 29th, 2026, every marked one needs to commit to 30 minutes of undistracted time with Him every single day. Not Bible study, though that's valuable. Not listening to worship music, though that's good. Not watching sermons or Christian content, though that has its place. 30 minutes of pure, undistracted presence. You and Him, nothing else. This is how the marking becomes activated, Jesus told me on that final morning. Most of my people give me their leftover time, their distracted attention, their divided focus. But the marked ones, they give me their first and best. They prioritize my presence above everything else. And in that place of undistracted communion, I download revelation, strategy, power, and assignment that they can't access any other way. Here's how to do it practically. Week 1, December 30th, January 5. The silence for the first week. Your 30 minutes is simply sitting in silence before God. No music, no words, no prayers, just silence. Find a place where you won't be interrupted. A closet, a car, a corner of your home, even a park bench. Set a timer for 30 minutes and sit in His presence. This will be harder than you think. Your mind will race. You'll think of 1,000 things you need to do. You'll feel like you're wasting time. You'll want to quit after 5 minutes. Don't. Push through, because in the silence you learn to recognize His voice. In the silence, the noise of the world begins to fade. In the silence, the marking becomes tangible. They need to learn to be still, Jesus said. They need to learn that I'm not impressed by their words or their activity. I'm looking for their attention, their focus, their willingness to just be with me without agenda. Week 2, January 6th through 12. The listening. In the second week, you continue the 30 minutes, but now you add one element, listening. After sitting in silence for 10 or 15 minutes, ask Him one simple question. Lord, what do you want to say to me today? Then listen. Actually listen. Don't fill the silence with your own thoughts. Don't try to manufacture a word. Just listen and write down whatever comes, even if it seems random, even if it doesn't make sense, even if you're not sure it's Him. Most of my people never hear me because they never stop talking long enough to listen, Jesus said. The marked ones are different. They've learned to value my words more than their own. They've learned to wait for my voice instead of filling the silence with their own noise. You'll be amazed at what he speaks to you in this week. Specific direction, prophetic insight, personal encouragement, correction, strategy, things you couldn't have known or figured out on your own. Week 3, January 13th, 19. The obedience. In the third week, you continue the 30 minutes of silence and listening, but now you add immediate obedience. Whatever he tells you to do, no matter how small, no matter how strange, no matter how uncomfortable, you do it that same day. He tells you to text someone you haven't talked to in years. Do it. He tells you to give away something you value. Do it. He tells you to apologize to someone. Do it. He tells you to start or stop a specific behavior. Do it. This is where most people fail, Jesus told me, and his voice was firm. They hear me, they recognize my voice, but they don't obey. They negotiate, they rationalize, they wait for confirmation, and the marking remains dormant because obedience is what activates power. This week will be uncomfortable. He's going to ask you to do things that don't make sense, things that cost you something, things that require faith, but every act of obedience strengthens the marking and increases your capacity to carry his presence. Week 4, January 20th, 26. The warfare. In the fourth week, you continue everything from the previous weeks, but now you add spiritual warfare. Because the moment you start walking in the marking, the moment you start moving in power, you become a target. During your 30 minutes after the silence and listening, spend 10 minutes in aggressive spiritual warfare. Declare your authority in Christ. Bind the enemy's attacks against you, your family, your finances, your health, your mind. Loose the purposes of God over your life. Speak to the mountains that are blocking your path and command them to move. The marked ones need to understand something, Jesus said, and his eyes were fierce. The enemy is terrified of them because they're not playing religious games anymore. They're not just going through motions. They're carriers of my actual presence and power. So he's going to attack. He's going to try to discourage them, distract them, derail them. But if they know their authority, if they stand firm in warfare, he can't touch them. Use Scripture. Declare it out loud. Remind the enemy and remind yourself of who you are in Christ, sealed, protected, empowered, victorious, not because of your own strength, but because of his finished work on the cross. Week 5, January 27th to 29, the commissioning. The final 3 days are different. These are the days when Jesus commissions you for your specific assignment in 2026. During your 30 minutes these 3 days, ask him directly, Lord, what is my specific assignment? What have you marked me for? What do you want to accomplish through me this year? And listen, write down everything he says. Don't edit it. Don't doubt it. Don't minimize it. Just receive it. Every marked one has a specific assignment, Jesus told me. Not a general calling, a specific assignment for this specific season. Some are called to intercession, some to evangelism, some to healing ministry, some to prophetic declaration, some to marketplace transformation, some to family restoration. The assignments are as diverse as my people, but every marked one has one, and they need to know what it is before February begins, because that's when the real work starts. The specific steps beyond the 30-day challenge, Jesus gave me 7 specific steps that every marked one needs to take immediately. 1. Make a public declaration. You need to publicly declare that you're saying yes to the marking. Not in a proud way, not in a boastful way, but in a way that creates accountability and burns bridges to your old life. Comment on this video. Post on your social media. Tell your close friends and family. Say something like, I'm committing to being fully surrendered to Jesus in 2026. I'm saying yes to whatever he asks of me, no matter what it costs. I'm choosing his presence over comfort, his purposes over my plans, his power over my safety. Will some people think you're weird? Yes. Will some people distance themselves from you? Probably. But that's part of the cost, and the declaration creates a stake in the ground that you can look back on when things get hard. 2. Identify what you need to let go of. Jesus is going to ask you to release things. Relationships that are pulling you away from him. Activities that are wasting your time and energy. Habits that are dulling your spiritual sensitivity. Possessions that you're trusting in more than him. Positions or titles that are feeding your ego instead of his kingdom. Ask him specifically, Lord, what do I need to let go of? And when he shows you, let it go. Quickly, completely, no looking back. The marked ones travel light, Jesus said. They can't carry my presence and power while they're weighed down with things that don't matter. They need to ruthlessly eliminate everything that's not essential to their assignment. 3. Find your tribe. You cannot walk this out alone. You need other marked ones around you. Not your old church friends who are going to try to talk you out of this. Not people who are content with comfortable Christianity, but other hungry, desperate, all-in believers who are saying yes to the same marking. Ask Jesus to connect you with them. They might be in your city, they might be online, they might be people you already know who are just waiting for someone else to step out first. But you need community with others who understand what you're walking in. The remnant needs to find each other, Jesus said, because the attacks are coming and they need to stand together. Iron sharpens iron. One can put 1,000 to flight, but two can put 10,000 to flight. The marked ones are stronger together. 4. Prepare for persecution. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. When you start walking in real power, when you start moving in authentic presence, when you start seeing miracles and breakthrough, you're going to face opposition. From the world, yes, but also from religious people who feel threatened by what God is doing through you. You'll be called extreme, divisive, unbalanced, deceived. You'll lose friends. You might lose your position in your church. You might face financial pressure. You might face family rejection. Prepare for it now. Count the cost. Decide now that you're going to stand firm no matter what, because if you're not prepared, the first wave of persecution will knock you down. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, Jesus reminded me. This isn't new. This is what it's always cost to follow me fully. The marked ones need to embrace this, not fear it, because persecution is actually confirmation that they're on the right path. 5. Step into the supernatural. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for more training or more knowledge or more confidence. The marking is the permission. The marking is the equipping. Now you just need to step out, pray for the sick, speak prophetic words, cast out demons, declare breakthrough over impossible situations, step into the supernatural, even if you feel completely inadequate, even if you've never done it before, even if you're terrified. The marked ones don't move in power because they're qualified, Jesus said. They move in power because they're willing. They step out in faith, and I meet them there, but they have to step out first. Start small if you need to. Pray for a stranger's headache. Speak an encouraging word to someone in line at the grocery store. Declare healing over your own body, but start, because faith without works is dead, and the marking without action remains dormant. 6. Document everything. Keep a journal of what God is doing. Write down the words He speaks to you. Record the miracles you see. Document the breakthrough, the provision, the protection, the prophetic accuracy, because you're going to need to remember. When the warfare intensifies, when doubt creeps in, when you're tempted to quit, you'll need to look back and see the evidence of His faithfulness. Testimony is powerful, Jesus said. It builds faith. It encourages others. It reminds my people of who I am and what I do. The marked ones need to be faithful witnesses, recording and sharing what they see me do. 7. Set a deadline. Here's the urgency. You have until January 29th, 2026 to complete the 30-day challenge and take these 7 steps. That's exactly 30 days from today. After that, the window closes. Not because God's grace runs out, but because the season shifts. February 2026 is when the real assignments begin, when the real warfare intensifies, when the real harvest starts. And if you're not prepared, if you haven't done the work in these 30 days, you're going to struggle. This is a kairos moment, Jesus said, using the Greek word for God's appointed time. Not chronos, regular time, but kairos, a specific window of opportunity that won't come again. The marked ones need to recognize it and respond to it now, not later. The warning and the promise. I need to be very clear about something. If you've read this far, if you've watched all 4 parts of this message, if you've felt the call and sensed the marking, you have a choice to make, and you need to make it before 2026 arrives. You can say yes, fully, completely, without reservation. You can commit to the 30-day challenge. You can take the 7 steps. You can embrace the cost and step into the power. And if you do, I promise you, Jesus promises you, that 2026 will be the most significant year of your life. You'll see miracles. You'll experience breakthrough. You'll walk in power and presence that you've only read about. You'll be part of the greatest move of God's Spirit in history. Or you can say no. You can decide it's too much, too risky, too costly. You can choose comfort over calling. You can stay in the pattern, crashing and retreating like every other wave. and you'll survive. You'll be fine. You'll keep going to church, keep reading your Bible, keep living a decent Christian life, but you'll miss it. You'll miss the marking, you'll miss the power, you'll miss the assignment, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been. Or, and this is the most dangerous option, you can ignore it. You can scroll past this message. You can dismiss it as emotional manipulation or religious hype. You can convince yourself that you'll come back to it later when you have more time, when you feel more ready, but later won't come. The window will close, and you'll never even know what you missed. I'm begging you, don't ignore this. Don't dismiss this. Don't put this off. Jesus is marking his remnant right now, in these final days of 2025, and he's asking you, will you say yes? My personal testimony. Let me close by sharing something vulnerable with you. I'm 51 years old. I'm single. I don't have children. For years, I struggled with feeling like I'd missed something, like my life hadn't turned out the way I thought it would. I'd achieved success. The chosen has been an incredible blessing, but there was still this emptiness, this sense that there had to be more. These 3 encounters on the beach changed everything for me, because I realized that God hasn't been withholding from me. He's been preparing me. My singleness isn't a lack. It's a freedom to pursue him without distraction. My age isn't a limitation. It's the accumulation of wisdom and experience that he can now use. My unconventional path isn't a mistake. It's been his plan all along to position me for this specific moment. I'm marked. I know I am. And I'm saying yes, fully, completely, whatever it costs. I've already started the 30-day challenge. I've already taken the 7 steps. I've already made the public declaration, and I'm already seeing things shift. Opportunities opening that were closed before, relationships forming that I didn't orchestrate, clarity coming about my specific assignment, peace in the midst of uncertainty, power in the midst of weakness. This is real. This isn't hype. This isn't manipulation. This is Jesus calling his remnant, marking his people, preparing them for what's coming, and he's calling you. The final call to action. Here's what I need you to do right now. Comment below with your declaration. Tell Jesus you're saying yes. Tell him what you're committing to. Tell him you're all in. Make it public. Make it real. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because I'm going to be documenting my journey through the 30-day challenge. I'm going to be sharing what God is doing, what I'm learning, what I'm experiencing, and I believe there's going to be an anointing on these updates that will strengthen and encourage you in your own journey. Share this message, not for my benefit, but because there are other marked ones who need to see this. There are people in your sphere of influence who have been feeling the same restlessness, the same call, the same marking, and they need to know they're not alone. They need to know what God is doing. Share this on your social media. Send it to specific people God brings to mind. Be a messenger of this word. Start your 30-day challenge today. Don't wait until January 1st. Don't wait until you feel ready. Start today, right now. Find your 30 minutes. Sit in silence. Begin the journey. Ask for prayer and offer prayer. In the comments, share your specific needs. What are you facing? What are you afraid of? What do you need breakthrough in? And pray for others who comment. Because we're in this together. We're a community of marked ones, and we need to support each other. The closing image. I went back to the beach one more time this morning, December 30th, just before sunrise. I stood at the water's edge, watching the sky change from black to gray to pink to gold, and I thought about everything Jesus had shown me over these 3 nights. The beach is a perfect metaphor for what he's doing. The waves keep coming, endless, repetitive, going nowhere. That's the pattern. That's the system. That's comfortable Christianity. But the lighthouse stands firm, unmoved by the storm, anchored to the rock, shining light into the darkness. That's the marked ones. That's the remnant. That's what we're called to be. And the dawn is coming. A new day, a new year, a new season. And it's going to be glorious for those who are prepared, for those who have said yes, for those who are marked. The question is, will you be one of them? I'm praying for you right now. As I write these final words, I'm praying that the Holy Spirit would confirm this in your spirit, that he would give you the courage to say yes, that he would remove every obstacle, every fear, every doubt that's holding you back, that he would activate the marking in you fully and completely. You were meant to see this message. You were meant to read every word. You were meant to be here right now at this exact moment, because Jesus has marked you. He's set you apart. He's calling you into something greater than you've ever experienced. Don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it. Don't delay. Say yes, the marked ones are rising, the remnant is being gathered, the greatest move of God's Spirit in history is about to begin, and you're invited to be part of it. Will you say yes? Comment below. Make your declaration. Start your journey. I'll see you on the other side.